Hillary Clinton gave a speech on foreign policy yesterday laying out her anti-ISIS strategy. Let's listen.
Our goal is not to deter or contain ISIS, but to defeat and destroy ISIS. A more effective coalition air campaign is necessary, but not sufficient. And we should be honest about the fact that to be successful, airstrikes will have to be combined with ground forces actually taking back more territory from ISIS. We should also work with the coalition and the neighbors to impose no-fly zones that will stop Assad from slaughtering civilians and the opposition from the air. Opposition forces on the ground with material support from the coalition could then help create safe areas where Syrians could remain in the country rather than fleeing toward Europe. This combined approach would help enable the opposition to retake the remaining stretch of the Turkish border from ISIS, choking off its supply lines.
That was not good. And it's not good for a variety of reasons. I'm going to get into all that in just a second here. But first of all, let me just lay out for you guys exactly what my position is. I laid this out in a segment that was over 20 minutes directly after the terrorist attacks in Paris. So let me just refresh your memory on that real quick so you know what I stand for and you know that I'm not just criticizing Hillary and not proposing anything that's different from what she's saying. So I said, number one, let Russia and France take the lead here. France was attacked. They have every right to self-defense. If they want to do specific targeted attacks on ISIS in Syria or elsewhere, by all means go ahead, let them lead the fight. Russia had their plane shot down recently. Again, it was an ISIS-linked bomber, so they want to go after it. They're also, Assad is their ally, and Assad is an enemy of ISIS. They're fighting Assad in the region in Syria, so if he wants to get involved, Putin wants to get involved, do it, by all means go right ahead. So Russia and France, yeah, let them take the lead here. Also, obviously, let other Muslims in the region fight ISIS, and many of them already are. So the Kurds, for example, you support the Kurds. You should also support the Shia militias and smooth out your relationship with Iran even more because they're basically ISIS's number one enemy. And we certainly can do intelligence help and humanitarian help. And for high-value targets, I'm fine with doing special forces as long as we go through the proper legal procedures in order to do it. That's my basic proposal here in terms of how we deal with ISIS and how we move forward. What Hillary Clinton is doing is going much further than that. And, I mean, she's, in all seriousness, doing what was done directly after 9/11, where politicians who were hawks used that as a further justification to do all kinds of interventions that didn't make sense and that were bad ideas. Like, for example, the Iraq War in 2003, which Hillary Clinton supported. So here she is again, not learning the lessons of history and calling for way too much and going way too far. And my fear is that what she's calling for will exacerbate the problem. It's going to make it worse. And nobody wants to see ISIS metastasize and get bigger and more powerful. And I fear that that's exactly what's going to happen if you do the kind of proposal that she's talking about. And that would be the best case scenario. Worst case scenario is there's some sort of an escalation into World War III with Russia. Now you say, well, Kyle, how do you get that out of what she said? It's actually very simple. She said, I want a no-fly zone in Syria. Well, do you know what a no-fly zone entails? Quite literally shooting down any planes that are in the no-fly zone, including Vladimir Putin's planes, Russian planes, who are fighting ISIS. Think about how little sense that makes. So we want to enforce a no-fly zone in Syria when Russian planes could violate it, and those Russian planes, in violating it, are bombing ISIS. So that means your no-fly zone would actually be protecting ISIS, whether or not you realize it. And it requires at least 70,000 ground troops to set up a no-fly zone. So you want to do an all-out ground invasion of Iraq and Syria again, as you pay lip service to the idea that that's not what you're doing. But you are doing it, Hillary. You are doing it. When she says, well, an air campaign is necessary, but that's not sufficient. That's another way of saying, yeah, more ground troops, do another ground invasion. Because, U.S. ground invasions have worked so well, like the one in Iraq and the one in Afghanistan. I love how nobody talks about the epic failure that's been. So we go in there to take out Al-Qaeda, and then we decide after we take out Al-Qaeda, Well, maybe we should say to fight the Taliban, too. So you fight the Taliban, and then whenever you pull back from any region, the Taliban immediately takes it over again. So that means that whenever we leave, the Taliban's going to take over more territory. What do you want to stay in Afghanistan forever? Is that what you want to do? All of our ground invasions have been an epic failure. You're not helping. You're making the problem worse. And the most important thing here, guys, is they still don't get it. They still don't fucking get it in Syria. All this anti-Assad rhetoric. Oh, Assad's the problem. Assad. This is no different than when in Iraq they would say Saddam Hussein, as if he was the problem. Now everybody looks back at the situation in Iraq, including a lot of Republicans. Democrats and Republicans look at it and go, yeah, Saddam Hussein was a fucked up guy, but geez, it sure would be nice to have him in power now because the ISIS monstrosity would have never risen up if he was there, because he kept the sectarian tensions under wraps. Again, that doesn't mean I'm defending Saddam Hussein or I'm saying he's a good guy. Absolutely not. I'm just saying that we don't live in a world where you get to pick the perfect unicorn and rainbows and puppy option. So, to default agree with Assad and say that he should stay in power is just to say, let's not make the same mistake we made in Iraq, because you topple Assad and who's going to fill the vacuum? Well, who are the two strongest opposition forces in the region? ISIS and al-Nusra Front, which is the al-Qaeda offshoot in Syria. So these policy ideas are just wrong, and she can't break free from that, man. And Obama's guilty of this too. Obama and his entire administration, where they think, and they've said, and they've tried to create this mythical third force in Syria that doesn't exist, of moderate Sunni rebels who are going to topple Assad, fill the vacuum, and then also fight ISIS and al-Nusra. But meanwhile, every time we try to create this moderate third force, what do? CENTCOM admitted this the other day. They go into Syria, our trained Sunni Syrian rebels, they immediately handed over all their weaponry to al-Nusra, which is al-Qaeda. These are the guys that we trained. They created this whole program to, create them from scratch if you have to. Moderate rebels. You know how many people we trained? 4. They said, we're going to get thousands of moderate rebels to go in there and fight. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So your choices are Assad or the rebels, who are now overwhelmingly jihadist and Islamist. Maybe there's like 12 Free Syrian Army dudes left in there, but most of them fled to Turkey and Europe. So there are your options. And what's Hillary Clinton saying? In a speech where she's attacking ISIS, she throws in lines about how Assad's the problem, and he's the dictator, and he's the bad guy, and we also got to stop him, and we got to do a ground invasion. No. Hillary Clinton's foreign policy is, let's do a further quagmire.